your recent exhibition, Blood, Sweat, and Tears: The Story of Integration. This exhibition, I saw it and it was really interesting, and it's extremely detailed and very, um, it's historically well researched, but presented with tremendous empathy. So, talk about the exhibition and how you came about the idea and what research went into it.
So our most recent exhibit, Blood, Sweat, and Tears: The Story of Integration in College Football, really was probably one of the most exciting pieces I've worked on myself. This goes back a little bit more to my background. In my master's studies, my master's is in public history, but my emphasis was African American history during the civil rights movement, but really looking more than the more traditional Martin Luther King Jr. and those concepts, but looking at ideas of Black power, Black nationalism, Pan Africanism, all in the backdrop of the Cold War and the Vietnam War, looking at U.S. foreign and domestic policies. On top of that, I also looked at sports and popular culture. And that is really the avenue I ended up pursuing to write my thesis. But that has always been an interest and a topic that I enjoy discussing and enjoy learning more and more about. And I am fortunate for the College Football Hall of Fame to give me the opportunity to share those stories. Our previous exhibit was actually on historically Black colleges and universities, talking about the great impact that they have made. With the current exhibit, it was really a lot of research I've either done previously. I had to laugh because sometimes it was me looking at old graduate school papers that I wrote and talking about those specific stories. I created about a list about 50 or so stories that I thought were worth highlighting. I mean, there could be hundreds. And some of them had more personal connections. For example, Mr. Terry LeCounte, who was the second African-American quarterback at the University of Florida, who also works at the College Football Hall of Fame. So that right there made a natural connection. And as you mentioned, I think that really goes back into my education background, trying to create a context that, is approachable to a variety of learners. It's really one of the greatest things I see is when someone realizes that Mr. LeCounte is walking around on the second floor and they just got done reading the exhibit on him. It's a lot of times they get a chance to go talk to him, take pictures, and we've been fortunate enough to have some of the athletes we highlight come in and do a little bit of a meet and greet and talk, share their stories, and it's one of those connections that is really excellent. In regards to reception of the exhibit, it's gone extremely well. I think once people see it, you see people, sometimes, they walk through quickly and they're on to the next. But I see a lot more people, they will stand there and read almost every single board because each one is a unique story. Each one is something, there's a lot of stories that people know, for example, someone like Jackie Robinson. However, we take the next step and people learn that Jackie Robinson's best sport in college was probably football. He also won a national championship in track, played baseball, of course, and then basketball. Learning those extra details, I think is an excellent way because, as I mentioned, the variety of learners, that expert might take away something they even never knew. Whereas the person who just is coming here with a family or friends, they also take away an important piece. One of the things I love to do is look back then on social media and see a lot of these people tag that exhibit or share something a lot of times it's pictures with Mr. LeCounte or pictures of the board, something they didn't know. And I always try to reach out and either thank them for coming through or asking them what's something new you learned.
It's a bit unfortunate that the exhibition was on display during the pandemic because, so many schools, they don't take school trips. I mean, which is rather unfortunate. But what plans do you have, in terms of online preserving the exhibition? Because a lot of work has gone into it and there's a lot of photos and texts and for schools to be able to use aspects of the exhibition as, something almost like pamphlet-like, but virtual pamphlet for them to educate some of the points that you've brought up.
So one of the ways, for example, our last HBCU exhibit, which ran, last year and kind of throughout the pandemic, just due to everything. Of course, unfortunately, we weren't as open as much as we would like to have been. But we actually combined that and included it in our new upcoming HBCU exhibit. And so, for example, there, when people, again, it's made for a variety of learners. So you have the people who just want to see artifacts. We have the artifacts. We have videos that'll be playing of the highlights and, a little bit the story of HBCUs. But also on our kiosks, you can take that deeper dive where you can learn about the origins of the first HBCUs, how the relationship between college football and HBCUs. And basically from that last exhibit, each one of those is part of the narrative within our new exhibit. And I think partially that's my plan with this integration exhibit, but also finding a way to make sure we can document it and have it as a resource for example, like a social justice curriculum or any other way we might see fit that really helps share that story, because I think it's such an important story that it needs to be shared.
What is the most memorable question someone has asked you? Not just question, but the experience that a visitor has had that has shared with you.
So one of the guys I featured in our current exhibit, Mr. James Reed, he broke the color barrier at Ole Miss in Mississippi. We were fortunate to, unfortunately, his teammate Ben Williams is no longer with us, but Mr. James Reed came through, and it was one of those moments where he was talking, and there was this taller white male who kind of came up and he was on crutches, which was interesting, but came up to talk to us, and he had let everyone kind of take pictures, and he had kind of walked up to Mr. Reed and told him that growing up in Mississippi, that Mr. Reed was his hero. Through everything he had done and gone through, and his family had all gone to Ole Miss, and I think his uncles had played. His family had played at Ole Miss a few years prior, but he grew up idolizing Mr. Reed, and to see a grown man cry to that level of just excitement, admiration, that was probably the most impactful moments. I took the opportunity to go and get one of our footballs. We always have autographed footballs in case any signings. I went and made sure I got one, and I made sure that Mr. Reed signed one for him. And that honestly was probably one of the more impactful moments that I've had at the Hall of Fame. I think partially it's because it was something I helped create, but also just seeing that in real time, and someone who played 30, 40, 50 years ago, to still have that emotional connection on someone. I think it's one of those, as we mentioned, being, a social historian, it's one of those areas that I don't think every field in the museum field can relate to, because a lot of times it's something you learned about, maybe, a dignitary, something like that. Whereas these are players, especially on the college level, you don't really realize how many of these stories are interconnected, or how deep of an impact it has on more of the social, personal level.
I literally got goosebumps as you were telling that story. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I'm here like in the Northeast, and there you're in Atlanta. So that's absolutely fabulous. And it makes, our work and your work at the Hall worth it, especially considering how many responsibilities you have. I mean, I was absolutely again, having had the pleasure of being given the tour by you, which was, I thank you once again. You have so much to do there, and you're short-handed. You need help.
So one of the aspects of being the historian and curator, I've also become a little bit of the de facto archivist as well. Being one of the people who is trained in museums, trained in archives, one of my first steps was really to make the back room, the area not everyone sees, not only a little bit more presentable, but also just where you can find things, I can find artifacts pretty quickly. One of the great things about this summer is we have two of their events and marketing interns, but I've made sure, and I've had the opportunity to carve out some time where they can help me with some of the tasks, and a lot of it and I've explained, it's not something that is super big that you need to wrap your head around. Sometimes it's literally helping me hold the jerseys or put them up while I take pictures, or let's go through the media guides and see the duplicates that we maybe not don't need to hang on to, or let's enter all these names in the database. Although they're little things, they make a world of difference when you are trying to create exhibits while also archiving and going through our expansive collection. Um, it's one of those exciting things about the job too. Every day is a little different. So some days I'm going through reliefs from our old Hall of Fame. Other days I'm building shelves or researching our next exhibit.
I do wish you tremendous success with finding those interns and helps and assistants for a number of reasons, obviously aside from the fact that you really need them, but from what I have, a little bit of what I've heard and a bit of what I've read online, the main criticism of the hall is that there are not enough objects on display. And again, it's not because of the shortage of objects, it's because you need registrars and archivists and people to help you present them, because it's just a tremendous space. You're not short of space, and it's a beautiful space, and it's so much fun to visit for our museum, and even sports fans, people who are passionate about sports, preferably in the Atlanta area, not necessarily. What are the 3 criteria that you look for, the top 3 for an assistant, for an intern, but say an assistant? What are those things? I mean, everyone thinks, oh, they have to be super passionate about college football. I don't think that's really necessary, but you tell me.
So in looking for, assistants or internship or interns for the Hall of Fame, one of the biggest areas I really look for, or I would look for, is the willingness to learn. A lot of times, obviously, if you have a passion for the museum field, that helps. That's great. Especially what we're doing currently, it's archives, learning how to scan or digitize or take photographs. I think that those are the areas I really look for. Obviously, having a passion for sports or football is great, but for me, it's something that's not necessary. I'd rather have someone that is super excited about archiving or scanning old programs, or taking pictures of helmets. Rather than someone who maybe is a diehard football fan, because sometimes I think that might even get you lost because you're busy reading all the pamphlets, you're reading all the programs, rather than going through them. But really, it's that willingness to learn and desire to help, I think, put the next person in the best position they can be.